What's up, YouTube? I'm changing the alternator on the 2011 Chevy Camaro SS. And first off, I started off by disconnecting the battery. And on this car, the battery is not in the engine bay, it's actually in the trunk. I disconnected that already. Now I just gotta remove this snorkel so I could get down below to get to the alternator. Undo this hose, that connector off. So I got this off. So from here, looking straight down at the back of the alternator, this connector right here have to be removed, and it's just push on this tab like so and pull the connector out, and just like that it's unplugged. Move that aside. Then there's a bolt. You can see the bolt right here, and I believe that's a 13 mil. And this bolt have a cap over it, like a protective boot. Just pull the boot back, get that socket over it, 13 millimeter. And now I just got to get my drive in there and ratchet that bolt off. And even though I have a fine tooth ratchet, it's not really enough room for me to get a lot of turns. This crack loose. Let's see if I could get it by hand. Okay, there we go. And remember, the battery is disconnected, so I don't have to worry about this cable touching and grounding out. Cable is off. Move that out of the way. Now that's it for all the connections on the alternator, the power, and the connector. So from here I move to the front. Now I did a previous video where I showed that this belt broke because the alternator pulley, the clutch, seized up. And this particular alternator has a clutch, so the belt is already broken. I'm just going to remove that. If the belt was intact and you're doing this job without having a broken belt, you would come to this pulley right here. Well, it's actually a tensioner, and on this one it's 15 mil. Get a socket on it, and from here you would just put it in the tightening motion, and as you move it, you could see the spring tension is moving, and that's how you would loosen the belt. You would bring it down and just slide the belt off. You could slide the belt off either from the water pump or any one of these other pulleys, and that's how you would get the belt off. So now back at the alternator, and it's held on by these two bolts. You can see this one at the bottom, this one here up top. Those are 15 mil, so I'm just got to get a 15 mil socket and a ratchet and take those out. That's one. and the bolt on the bottom, that's longer. The top one is shorter. Now normally I'd be able to kind of just push on the alternator and kind of pry it out, but it's been sitting so long, I'm gonna have to try to get a pry bar in there and pry it out. And just in case you guys hear some sounds going on in the background, it's like 95 degrees outside today, and I gotta set up a little umbrella, give me some shade. So you're probably hearing the wind moving it around. Now I just gotta get my pry bar in this little opening right here and try to pry the alternator out. It moved a little bit. I don't know if that showed on camera, but it did move. What I went to is a smaller pry bar and try to just get further down in there and keep prying it out. You can see it's moving again. And what I pretty much did was just to put my pry bar right here, hit the top of it to push down, and then I flipped the curve end around and got it inside on the bottom part, and did the same thing, just hit it, turn it as I go along, and a few good whacks and it came out. Well, it came loose. I don't know if it's fully out yet. Yeah, it's actually out. Okay, so yeah, it's out. Now what I discovered is I gotta remove the air box. The alternator comes out the direction of the air box and not towards the front. So I removed the air box, and now I have this room. Now I'm leaving this. It's actually a metal line, it's not flex, so I'm just gonna leave that. This rubber line, that's crimped onto a metal line. There's a 10mm right here that secures a bracket. I'm gonna take that off. That way this line becomes flexible, and I should be able to pull the alternator straight through this way. And that bolt was so rusted it actually broke right off. Even though I created a lot of room, the alternator is still not gonna pass here. It's gonna hit the bracket, so I gotta remove the bracket. And to remove that, there are two bolts. There's one right here, and then there's a nut right here. It's actually a stud. You take the nut off, the stud stays in, and this bracket comes right off. And these are 15mm. Got the nut off, now I'm going for the bolt. And that bolt is the same size as the lower bolt for the alternator. just like that, it's out. And I've went ahead, matched up the old alternator with the new one. Everything matches up. The bracket is the same. The connections are the same. So now I just gotta get this one in. And you can see the difference here. Where this clutch, you could rotate it. On the old one, it's actually frozen. So I just gotta navigate it through. And that's in. Now I'll put the bracket back on. And again, it's a long bolt. It goes right below the pulley. Now I just have to make sure the alternator, the connector points upwards. So I got the bottom in, and it's a long bolt. And I'm not going to tighten it all the way, I'm just going to catch a few threads. The top is kind of hard to get in because this bushing that holds the alternator in, sometimes it gets pushed in when you tighten it, so you got to kind of use a hammer and bang it out. But be very careful doing that, you don't want to break the mounting bracket. I get my small pry bar and I just sit it right against it, hold it like so, then I use my hammer and I hit on the pry bar. I just gently tap it, and I just keep trying the alternator until it fits. And now see, the alternator slides right in. And when you sit the pry bar in there and hitting it, you're actually letting the pry bar sit on this collar, and that's what you're actually hitting it, pushing it this way, just to give you enough room to get your alternator in. This is the cable that comes from the battery. The new alternator comes with a brand new nut on it, so I'll use that. Put the cable on. gonna crank that down, not too tight. Put this protective boot back on. Get my plug. Plug that in. That's it for the alternator. So now I just got to put the air box back, put the belt on, and that should be it. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.